this state is burning down. Why is it burning? Because California refuses to allow counties to actively manage their forests for healthy stands management. Why? Because of the spotted owl. Now, anybody that knows about timber knows that if you go out and hoot an owl and you hear an owl, that takes 500 acres of timber off the logging chart. You may be following the same owl every day. You don't have to see him, he doesn't have to live there. All you have to do is hear him, and in that given 500 acres you cannot log, unless you do so many things no one wants to do them. And so, timber harvest in California has gone from a sustainable amount of timber, and right now we're only harvesting 4% of our annual growth, which leaves 96% to burn. But what it also did was it paid for the resource counties, public education, health and safety, and roads departments. And that was PILT money alone. Timber harvest receipts were about 20% or more of the budget in Siskiyou County. And that's timber harvest on federal trust land alone, not to mention Sierra Pacific Fruit Growers, Timber Vest, and all the rest of them. We are not poor here. We've been impoverished, and that is something we can correct, and we have the power to correct. So, with Baker versus Carr, the Supreme Court said we have the authority to enter the state electoral process. They have never had that authority before Baker versus Carr. Now, Earl Warren, by the way, he was the Chief Justice that President Eisenhower called the worst fool mistake he ever made. After Baker versus Carr, they thought that no state would ever challenge the federal government on the election process because they'd be afraid of litigation. 30 court challenges later, the case of, let's see if I can find it here. Gray versus Sanders came up. Gray versus Sanders was intended to correct all the mistakes they made in Baker versus Carr. Something like 27 court challenges later, Justice Warren decided to put a nail in the box. And with Reynolds versus Sims, he dictated that all state elections must be one man, one vote. It's the constitutional way. Well, Justice Warren must have made that up because it's nowhere in the Constitution. Now, what Justice Warren did was he hung his hat on Section 1 of the 14th Amendment, which says everyone's entitled to equal protection under the law. The problem with Warren's logic is voting is not mentioned in Section 1. The 14th Amendment was clearly intended so that a person of one race would not be unfairly prosecuted for the same crime a person of another race would not be prosecuted for. Warren made up the concept with which he enacted Reynolds versus Sims. So now 30 state legislatures have changed the way they conduct business, and California is in a train wreck, and it's just going faster and faster every single day. Our debt is climbing at a rate of, I think, $5,000 a minute. Everyone in here who has a child, your child is already on the hook for $29,000 worth of debt the day he's born in the state of California, and it's getting worse. Our rural economies are being decimated. People and businesses are leaving here at an apocalyptic rate. Now, fortunately for us, so you have to ask yourself, if the state of California is barred by the Supreme Court from having a state senator in each county, why would the state of Jefferson be allowed to do that? Fortunately for us, the Supreme Court went on to ignore itself twice after the after the Reynolds decision. And that was in Brown versus Thompson in Wyoming, where Niobrara County, a very small county, and in Wyoming, state jurisdictional boundaries were drawn largely on county lines because they also had a federal model of government in Wyoming. And what happened was Niobrara County sued the government to say we have no representation, and the Supreme Court agreed, and they said even small, sparsely populated areas are entitled to representation provided it's not done prejudicially and it serves a greater state political purpose. The court went on to ignore itself again in Saylor versus Tulare Water, where they said, because one of Warren's premises in Reynolds was votes can't represent rocks and trees, votes can only represent people. But they ignored themselves in Saylor versus Tulare Water, where they said that votes can represent rocks and trees, in other words, geographic areas, provided it's not done prejudicially and it serves a greater political good. In the state of Jefferson, constitutionally, we will outline one state senator for each county. In other words, the representative model has to be a three-legged stool. You have to have the people, you have to have the geography, and you have to have the executive. If the top of the stool isn't level, all the money slides off onto the floor. The people need voice. Our assembly will be elected one man, one vote, just as it is now. In that model, urban areas will have a greater share of the voice. That's just the way it is, and I don't have any problem with that. But on the geographic level, every place needs representation. Communities, yes, votes can't represent rocks and trees, but they must represent communities. We have diverse geography, we have diverse geographic needs. The desert communities don't have the same needs that the forested communities do. They don't need mechanical thinning of the desert, but we do in the forest or it's going to burn. They don't have the same types of species to protect that we do. They don't have the same economic model we do. We must have representation for community. Community values, community needs have to be served, and that's what the state senate of the state of Jefferson will do, is serve that geographical need for representation. Now, if we have balance, and we have a balance of popular vote and a balance of geographic need, we will have a state that functions properly, where people must cooperate and they must collaborate and they must compromise in order to go forward. Also, we need to be immoral people. The Constitution won't protect people that have no morality. You know, the law never stopped anybody from doing anything. I'm a deputy sheriff for the county of Siskiyou, a reserve deputy sheriff, and I've seen this thousands and thousands of times. PC 187 never stopped anybody from murdering anyone. Prison did. You have to say, I'm not going to break the law because it's wrong. That's what stops people from speeding. That's what stops people from drinking and driving. The law doesn't stop any of that. So we have to be immoral people, and we certainly have that seed here. I've been to every county in Jefferson now. I've talked to thousands and thousands of people here. We think differently here. We have a historic bond, we have an economic bond, we have a geographic bond, we have a historical bond. We came here as part of the first group of pioneers. We know what hard work is, we know how to do these things. Is this impossible? Absolutely not. Do we need to do it? We had better do it, or all of our children will be gone, and most of us will be gone too. Why? Because we can. This state is driving productive people out at a record rate. And remember, the productive people are the ones that pay the taxes for all the programs that non-productive people depend upon. We have to maintain that productivity, or we will lose this area economically and we'll all be broken, we'll all be gone. In Siskiyou County alone and in the state of Jefferson alone, our economy is only worth 28% of what it was in 1965. We've lost 72% of our economy so far under the one-man, one-vote political process of the state of California. We need to restore representation. What about the feds? 68% of the land in Siskiyou County is, quote, federal land. First of all, that's a misnomer. Federal land is public land. We are, in fact, part of the public. We should have some say over how public land is governed and what happens on public land. And quite frankly, we do. We have the liberty and we have the jurisdiction. You in this room have the jurisdiction right now to stop federal intrusion into your logging practices and your natural resource decisions. Your problem is you don't have a state government that will back those decisions up. The state of California does not demand that the federal government comply with coordination statutes. In fact, they don't even require it. In fact, they don't even ask them first, are you coming? When we have meetings with the federal government, they say coordination, well, we cooperate, and we say no, no, no. There are federal laws that demand that you coordinate with all local governmental agencies prior to the planning process of any project you want to accomplish within their jurisdiction. And they don't do it. Why? Because the state doesn't insist upon it, and the state never even comments on it. We've had federal government representatives fail to show up to meetings, and afterwards they said, well, it doesn't matter anyway because we're going to close those roads. Well, here's the reality of the situation. The federal government has zero jurisdiction over public health and safety. You do. The people who elected you expect you to have jurisdiction over public health and safety, and you do have that jurisdiction, and so does your sheriff. In fact, your sheriff has the ultimate jurisdiction over it, and in Otero County, New Mexico, the county commissioners directed the sheriff to entertain requests for proposals to log federal trust land down to the timber harvest plan only. No one wants to ignore the law, and no one wants to start some kind of revolt with the federal government. And they also directed the sheriff to arrest any federal officer who impeded that process. And guess what? No one did, because the federal government knows that they have no jurisdiction over that. In Otero County, they had an operating mill within 30 days, and they are now safe from catastrophic wildfire because their timber harvest is down to healthy stands management and is mechanically thinned. So they're no longer in danger from catastrophic wildfire, and they've created a business there that employs people and raises tax revenues for the county. They weren't even sued over this. None of the environmental groups who threatened to sue them ever brought a lawsuit to court. Why? Because the Equal Access to Justice Act does not pay their attorneys when they sue a county or a state. They only get paid when they sue the federal government, and this wasn't the federal government's idea. In fact, the federal government was against it. So the EAJA, and most environmentalists, by the way, they're not ecologists, they're law firms. Ecology is a science. Environmentalism, quite frankly, a lot of times is a law practice. And none of these guys are willing to risk hundreds of thousands of dollars on a lawsuit that will bear no fruit because they're not guaranteed to have their attorneys paid. So Otero County did it, Carbon County is about to do it, Nye County is working on it, and the Western Lands Council, in fact, using the 9th and 10th Amendments of the United States Constitution, led by the state of Utah, is making a very serious run under the Equal Footing Doctrine to return federal land, federally managed lands. Now, I'm not talking about trust land, I'm not talking about national parks, I'm talking specifically about BLM land, to return control of BLM land to the state to be placed in beneficial use. Now, by beneficial use, I don't necessarily mean selling it, although under the Equal Footing Doctrine and the Enabling Acts of 1959, the state of Alaska regained control of 4 million acres of federal land, which they sold, and that paid for their first couple of years of statehood, and they came out of that with zero deficit. So certainly that is one avenue, but that's not for me to decide. That's for folks like you to decide how that goes. But under the Equal Footing Doctrine, and Thomas Jefferson and Ben Franklin and John Adams all agreed with this, whenever new states are admitted to the Union, under the Equal Footing Doctrine, they enter the national stage on an equal footing with the original 13. Now, west of the Mississippi, there was a congressional deal made where western states were not allowed to maintain control of federally managed lands. But as I said, the state of Utah is leading the charge with a couple other states to regain control of those lands for their beneficial use. And quite frankly, if you look at the Constitution itself, they've got a pretty good case. And what we would do in the state of Jefferson, we would make those demands as well. That as we enter the national stage, under the Equal Footing Doctrine, we would be entitled to, if not the bulk of, at least some of that federally managed lands in order to give our state a head start and place those under beneficial use and state management. And however that state management goes is up to the legislature and up to guys like you, certainly not me. And I don't want to pretend as though I'm the Emperor of Jefferson. We will have a state constitutional convention. We will all have a say in this. Now, the way this has to work, let me see if I've forgotten anything. That's how we would recapture our resources. What we propose is a state where the counties have the lion's share of the power. A state should do what states do best. Talk to the federal government, administer federal programs, negotiate with other states, conduct trade with other countries. Other than that, this county knows best what this county needs, not the state. You cannot have government from 500 to 900 miles away and hope to have any empathy from those people toward the issues that you are afraid of or that threaten your community. You are the ones to know that, and you should be the ones to decide those things. And the people in this room elected you for that reason. You represent them. Alex de Tocqueville, when he came to the United States shortly after the conclusion of the American Revolution and after the first French Revolution, he avoided the guillotine somehow. He was a nobleman, and he was sent to America because democracy in France didn't work. In fact, democracy never works because it's mob rule. And that's what happened in France. They literally legalized murder in a sense, and they were murdering all of the minorities in France with the guillotine. But they recognized their failure very shortly after, and they sent de Tocqueville to the United States to find out why constitutional republic works and why pure democracy doesn't work. And one thing he found, and in his book, Democracy in America, he wrote this. He said the township is the greatest form of government ever known to man, the county, because the people in the county govern from the bottom up. They elect representatives that they can look in the eye. You are good people and you're hard-working people, and you're here to take care of the problems that this community faces. And no one but you and the people in this community knows what those problems are, and no one but you and the people in this community is in any position to say how they should be handled better than you are. Certainly not a legislator, for example, Fran Pavley, the illustrious senator from Agora Hills, California, who introduced groundwater management. Now, mind you, there are very few wells in Agora Hills. Most of the wells are in rural California. So once again, there is going to be a programmatic solution which her constituents will not pay for. And I've met Ms. Pavley. She's a very thoughtful representative. I'm not implying a personal problem, but she's just wrong. And she has no empathy for the way the citizens of Plumas County are forced to live their lives as a result of these programs. The mileage tax, the carbon tax, the gasoline taxes, which by the way are going to go up another 20 cents a gallon in January, and Darrell Steinberg thinks it's going to be $2 a gallon before they're finished. CARB, cap and trade, high-speed trains that you pay for but don't get any use out of. The Bay Bridge that was 8 years late, or 20 years late and $8 billion over budget. These are problems that we don't have here, and we're no help to Lower California solving those problems. A state split is a win-win for everybody. People in Lower California have problems we can't imagine, we don't contribute to, and we're no help with. Large infrastructure problems, big earthquake, large urban centers, gangs, things like that. We, on the other hand, would win out of this deal because we would be free to establish a constitutional republic with a business and regulatory environment favorable to the conduct of business and getting businesses to move here. A place that protects property rights and protects the rights of the individual to use that property to make a living for himself and his family. We don't, I had a young kid from Fox come up to talk to me one time, and he said, you know what people in Sacramento think? And I said, no, I don't have any idea what they think. He said, well, they think you want to cut down all the trees, kill all the fish, and get all the guns. We were sitting in my front yard, which is in a forest, and it's a house that my wife and I built ourselves. And we were sitting there, and I said, well, take a deep breath. And he said, yeah, it's really pretty here. I said, now imagine this place without one single living creature, not one tree left standing, but I got a pile of guns in the backyard. And he said, that's pretty silly, isn't it? And I said, yeah, that's pretty silly. No one advocates that. This isn't about party. This has nothing to do with politics. I'm not a member of any party. I vote for whoever I think is going to do the best job. The last guy I actually voted for that won for president was Jimmy Carter. Sorry about that. But I'll tell you, I thought Jimmy was an honest guy. He was wrong about a lot of things, but I voted honestly for him. What I'm saying is, this is apolitical. I don't care what party our new representatives are from. It doesn't matter to me. It's irrelevant, because they will be our representatives. And if we don't like them, we'll be free to change them. The county of Plumas will vote, one man, one vote, for their state senator. No one loses their vote. This is not going to be an appointed position. All of the people will vote for their assembly person based on whatever apportionment scheme we come up with. Here's another aspect of representation, and this is where the challenge becomes important. In the state of California, each state senator represents 900,000 people. That's not representation. Each assembly person represents 450,000 people. If every constituent in my senator's district called him once a year, and all he did was answer the phone 8 hours a day, 261 days a year with vacation and weekends, he'd be able to spend about 6 seconds with each caller. That's not representation. George Washington said 1 for 30,000 is democracy, 1 for 40,000 is tyranny. So, if we challenge for the state of Jefferson and we are ignored, and by the way, the declaration and petition to withdraw does not cost this county anything. You don't have to do anything different. You don't have to direct any county agency to do anything they're not doing now. It will not and does not cost you 1 cent. This is a movement of the people. If you affirm and declare to withdraw from the state of California, and by the way, it's not even a resolution, it's simply a declaration. If you affirm and declare to withdraw from the state of California, you will be buying a seat at the table when representation is discussed here. We already have 6 counties. We have enough counties to start that discussion now. But what we would like to do is include every county that wants to be involved in that discussion. And it buys you a seat at the table when we talk about representation. There are probably people in this room that think this can never be done. History will determine who's right. But I think we have to try, because we must address our lack of representation no matter where that leads. I firmly believe, and I am convinced, that we can execute a state split. It's been done before. It's not going to be easy. But I spoke with Darrell Steinberg's chief legislative analyst. And this lady she was very nice. Believe me, I was really set not to like her. And I couldn't. She was an intelligent, bright, articulate woman. And she said to me, "You have made some extremely compelling points. And I'm not opposed to this. But what we need to do is we need unity. We need unity of purpose, unity of local governmental officials, and unity of the people, so that when we go to Sacramento to discuss this proposition with the majority party, we can help them understand why it is we need to do this and how they will also win for their constituents in its doing. And that we can certainly do. And we have a ton of talent in this movement and a ton of talent in these rooms, you included. We had a PhD in education in Yuba County who was there on some other matter. And after we finished our presentation, which they affirmed the declaration, he stood back up and said there is a tremendous amount of waste in the California education process. Can I help write the plan for Jefferson? And we said, you certainly can. I mean, we need these ideas. We need this input. We've never split a state in half before. We need all the expertise we can get. Now, when we come down to the declarations, this is the process. We are going to take about the next year or two, or whatever it takes. We're not going to quit this. We're going to keep going until we get our own state. Whether Plumas County elects to become part of it or not is a decision the people of Plumas County have to make. I'm not here to tell you how to live. I'm here to ask you some questions. If you're happy with the economic model that California has been in for the last 50 years, and you want to go another 50 and see if it works out different, that's your business, and God bless you and good luck with California. I'm here to offer you an opportunity to change this dynamic for your people, for your children, for their children and their grandchildren. I'm here to ask you if you want to be a part of restoring constitutional republic to state government, and that's the only reason I'm here. So what we will do is we have 6 declarations now. We've already recorded 2 of them. The way this process works, we record with the state Secretary of State first. In that recording, we are making our declaration. We are saying the representative model of California is unconstitutional, illegal, and does not represent the people of the North State. Then we recorded with the Senate Pro Tem and the Speaker of the Assembly. When we did that, we were asking for redress of that grievance. We want to split the state because Reynolds versus Sims says we can only have one man, one vote in California. And that doesn't work for rural Northern California, so we need state split so that we can address those issues on our own where the state of California is not willing or not able or doesn't want to. And we've asked them to do something. So we created a question, and the declaration gives everyone standing that signs it. Everyone that affirms that declaration has standing in this process. Once we have asked the question, we've declared that California doesn't work, we are not represented, we've had a serious dilution of vote, 900,000 people for every state senator. Your vote's worth .001 of what it was in 1850. That's pretty serious dilution. And our redress is, allow us to split this state according to Article 4, Section 3. If we are ignored, that creates the harm. So now, we have standing, we've asked for something, and we have harm. The court must find remedy, or they'll simply dismiss any challenge we make, provided California doesn't just vote and allow us to split. What's the remedy for lack of representation? More representation. If we execute a model with even one for 40,000, that would mean thousands of assembly people in the state of California. It would be 1,500 state senators and 1,600 and something assembly people. That's obviously untenable for the state. What would be the other remedy? Allow us to split under Article 4, Section 3, continue with the way you do business now, that's fine, it's up to you to do that, and we in turn would be free to establish a constitutional republic with a state senator for each state and one assembly person for every 20 or 30,000. We'd have 68 assembly people and 15 senators. That's manageable and it's doable. Okay, what about the debt? How would we divvy up the stuff? Once we have a declaration of separation, we have, in Article 4, Section 3 is very clear. It takes a 51% majority in the State House and 51% in Congress. And by the way, I've been assured by one congressman that if the elections go well in November, that the arithmetic looks good on the federal level for us. The woman who represents Darrell Steinberg helped me count the votes right there. And she said, by the way, she said she wasn't opposed to it. Mr. De Leon is taking his place. We'd have to make this case with him as well. She said we would need to change 16 votes in the Assembly and 11 votes in the Senate. I mean, that sounds like a lot, but we're willing to try. We're willing to do this. And with everyone's help, I believe it can be done because it's a logical process. And even Darrell Steinberg's office saw the wisdom in it. So it was very encouraging to me. So once we have declarations, let's say we won the vote in the Senate and we won the vote in the state. Then the committees of separation are formed. They're formed by Congress, by the state, and by our constitutional convention in which you would have a say. Probably each county would appoint 2 representatives. According to the state's Attorney General for the 6 states Legislative Analyst Office proposal, and this is not my opinion, this is Camilla Harris's opinion, assets that lie within the boundaries of the new state, because even though we didn't have representation, we were still taxed when these things were built, would belong to the state of Jefferson. Anything within our boundaries would belong to us. We don't have to pay for the infrastructure over again. We don't have to pay California back. We would own that stuff. So we would be free to use those assets immediately under the auspices of the state of Jefferson. Camilla Harris also says, because we ascribe to the principle of one man, one vote, 3% of California's debt would be apportioned to the state of Jefferson. This is not a bad thing. California only admits to $350 million worth of debt. We would be responsible for 3% of what they admit to. That is achievable now. But if we wait 20 years until California gets caught up in this and it's 5 trillion, 10 trillion, probably we wouldn't be able to sustain ourselves. We would have a population of about 1.2 million people. We would have a geography which would be 44th or 45th smallest state, but not the smallest state. We wouldn't be the least populous state. And on our very first day, our economy would be 15% larger than the state of New Mexico. Now, the next objection is, but we're poor. Why do we want to start out as a very poor state? We're poor now. Why is it okay to be poor in California with no place to go but down, but not okay to begin anew in a constitutional republic that encourages business and encourages people to come here and encourages enterprise, and we start out poor, but the only direction we can go from there is up? And also, I've been interviewed probably 5 times by international news people from Asahi Shimbun in Tokyo and Der Spiegel in Germany and the BBC last week. And tourism alone, the first Article 4, Section 3 state split in 150 years, Japanese and German people would be flocking here like you wouldn't believe. And I have to give you guys credit. Plumas County has very successfully begun the transition from resource to tourism. And it looks good here. The Great Eagle is a beautiful town. This is a beautiful town. You have avenues to go forward. And under state split, those avenues would be bigger and better because you could begin responsible use of your resources. You could begin to encourage business. You would have more tourism than you have now. Your economy, I am convinced that our economy would flourish. We are talking to Humboldt County now. The Chinese are negotiating to build a deep water seaport in Humboldt County. We could sell our goods and services to the entire world through that seaport. We have a lot of opportunity here and we have a lot of talent here and we can do this. Now, if we go through the voting process and in a perfect world we win, the committees of separation begin, we begin to divide the assets, divide the debt, we hold a state constitutional convention, and by the way, we're going to write a state constitution only as a point to begin from. There's no point in reinventing the wheel. We can take all the rural states' constitutions, pick out the best parts, because the state's constitutional convention is going to tear that apart anyway and come to conclusions that the people of Jefferson want. This is not for me to decide, but we just need a place to start from. In addition to that, the state's constitutional convention can decide a lot of things about courts, about education, and you all will have a say in those things. If you choose not to go with the state of Jefferson, there will still be a state, because none of us are going to let this go. If we do, we're finished here. My wife and I have just about been regulated out of existence in our business. And so we are in the survival mode. If we don't have a new state, our business and many other businesses probably won't survive. If we create a state that's even close to what I'm talking about, I get calls every single day from people who say, if you get that done, I'm moving my company there. That's the potential. A free state, can you imagine that? People would move and bring their families and bring their ideas and their thoughts with them, and our economy would literally flourish. You know, I'm a retired 747 captain. I've been flying all over the world for pretty close to 40 years. I was a direct participant in one war, and I've flown airplanes for the United States government in a total of 6 wars, including the very first one, in some of the most horrible socialist pest holes you can imagine. And I'm here to tell you one thing. The difference between constitutional republic and tyranny is easy. In constitutional republic, you wake up in the morning and you're secure in the knowledge that the rules didn't change while you were asleep. You're secure in the knowledge that the things you thought you owned yesterday, you still own today. And you can use in the same way you have been using since you purchased those items with the money you earned. You can make a living for yourself and your family, and you know the law and the government is going to support that endeavor. Under any tyrannical form of government, you wake up in the morning and you ask yourself, what's the government going to do to me today? And I'd like you to ask yourselves honestly, what form of government do we live under in California? Thank you very much, and I'd be happy to answer any of your questions.
We have a few more minutes if anyone wants to make any public comment. About 6 to 7 more minutes. Today was set aside for the presentation only. If this is, if there's a need or desire for it to come back, it will come back at a future
One thing
date.
I'd like to add, sir, is that if you have questions about finances or any of those types of things, I'd like to please get your cards, and I'd be happy. We have an 88-page financial document. I'd be happy to email that to anybody that wants to see it so that you can help reassure yourself that we're not only viable but profitable.
Is it online already?
You know, I think it is, but being technologically to the right of a stone, I'm not really sure how to get to it.
It is online, and the gentleman back there can answer where it is.
But I'd be happy to email it to you if that's what you'd like.
Is it on your, you have a kind of a website?
Yeah. JeffersonDeclaration.net, but like I said, I'd be happy to email it to you individually if you prefer.
Here's my card.
That's good. That's like my card. My card is not this nice on paper.
Speak up.
I thought I found one and I was reading quite a bit of it.
Thank you, man.
And seemed like it was about 90 pages.
Yeah, so I think it's 88 pages or something. And I think, Steve, you're revising that document now for,
Yes, we did. We have revised it to show the revenue for each of the counties, the expenditures, and also K through 12 spending. So that's the latest.
is that online now?
That is online
On the Jefferson Declaration website?
on both the Jefferson Declaration and the Placer Jefferson State.net. They're
And
both
is it
the
under
same thing.
financing?
I'm sorry, which?
Financing, Joe.
Financing Jefferson? Yeah.
Which counties have approved or have declared their
The declarations have been received for Siskiyou, Modoc, Glenn, Tehama, Yuba, and Sutter. We've recorded the two from Siskiyou and Modoc. The next recording will probably take in either 2 or 4 more. And, oh, and by the way, we're also talking to 12 more counties. And I've had calls, and I'm not kidding about this, I've had calls from Sacramento County, Riverside County.
Thank you.
I've had calls from Riverside, Inyo, Mono, San Bernardino, Orange County. People want representation, and they don't feel like they're getting it. But
That's all we ask.
we want to stop at 12 or 13 counties we think is financially viable, and we have historical and economic linkage, and we think that would be a very good start. Also, if you have questions about Oregon, the people in Southern Oregon, Tom Mallums from the Klamath County Commissioners, he wants to vote on this right now. And so Klamath County would like to vote on it, and they feel like it would be a good fit for them. As far as the rest of the counties in Southern Oregon, the Article 4 process gives us the ability to petition California legislators, but we don't have the ability to petition Oregon. So what we need for them to do is form real committees and make some moves and really begin an effort there. And if they did, then we would show up and help them with paperwork and anything else they need, but we can't do that for them. So Klamath County is the only real movement, and we just haven't spent any time up there yet.
Gentlemen back to your head.
We, the people of Plumas County, have supported you folks. So all we're asking is that you support us. Short and sweet.
With that in mind, what's your opinion of having the people of Plumas County vote on this?
I think we should vote on it.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the only way to have the true
I
representation.
disagree. I don't.
Yes.
I suppose to have the commissioners, the supervisors, rather than supervisorship, the people should vote on it.
I think the people should vote on
I
it.
think that's a smart comment.
Yeah.
I feel it's an important decision. We have 11,000 people that are registered to vote in this county, and they should weigh in. That's how I feel.
You have the ability as commissioners to place that on the ballot if you choose to do that. The only thing I'd like to say about that is, first of all, the declaration doesn't cause any legal action. In other words, a state won't be formed because you sign the declaration. The declaration is only the mechanism where we go to the state and say, these are the areas that support the idea. Our problem with it is, and I'm not opposed to the ballot, we've won in the ballot box before, but we have a somewhat narrow window because the Ninth Circuit Court is the Chief Justice, who oddly enough has a great record in voter dilution, is retiring soon. And we don't know who his replacement's going to be. So if we were to bring a court challenge, we'd rather do that sooner than later because we know this guy and we know what he's capable of. However, that's irrelevant to the process, and if you choose to place it on the ballot, we're not afraid of the people, and we're certainly not afraid of the vote, and that's okay too. So that's up to you.
Kind of different decision than our normal, shall we fund this?
Maybe just a little.
I think we should have the board vote on it because you guys are to represent us and you know where this community stands and what we want for our economic stability and our futures and our everything we need to survive in this county. After we don't do this, there's going to be a lot of people leaving.
And we would know better what the community stands. if we
No,
actually
well,
voted
you
on it.
know how the community feels, John. You know where the heart and soul is of this town and what we need to do to save this and save our forest, our timber, our revenue, our schools. You know what we need. So you guys need to open your hearts and realize that this might be a really good
Look,
chance to save our county.
I like to hear from all the people in my district, because I know a lot of them that are against it.
Do they know what they're voting, do they know what you just heard?
No, they don't.
No, but that's where they should get an analysis of it, pro and con.
That's
I mean, that's only,
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different kinds of state splits. They had that 6-state split, which these guys that are putting this together, and I'd like to publicly thank them for the efforts they've done. It's just been absolutely awesome. And I don't see anything wrong with the board voting
I don't either.
and then put it out to the people. I mean, you gotta vote to put it out to the people.
Well, there's another aspect to that, and what the gentleman says partly has some merit, because this isn't, first of all, this isn't legally binding. If you affirm the declaration to buy a seat at the table, because if we can get legislation drawn, we want to do that sooner rather than later. If you choose to opt out later, it's a simple vote of the board to opt out. I mean, you're not casting concrete because you affirm a declaration.
Yeah.
Well, that's basically what I was gonna say, is let the board do it, and then if we do a vote later, that's fine, but let you guys make up your decision first.
Also,
Based on what you.
Okay, we're running out of time, and I'm not gonna let it go too much longer because we do have some actual county business to attend to.
Mark, can you explain what Sutter County did? They may be interested in hearing that. That may be in line with what they're looking.
What Sutter County did was they opted to pass a resolution which would include them in the Jefferson state split process, and when it came to legislation, they would then place it on the ballot and allow the people to vote as to whether they want to be included in Jefferson or not.
That's
So that's
exactly
what,
what
that's
I
what the
I'd like to add
Sutter-
one comment in response to Supervisor Simpson. This meeting today was pretty well publicized. We did everything we could to ensure that people knew about it. And I doubt you'll find one person in this room that's opposed to it. Where are the people?
I know that.
No
I'm
kidding.
asking, where are the people that are opposed to it?
Yes, there is, I can tell you
I
right now that there
just,
are
how
people in
many
this room
people
opposed to it.
actually live in
Yes.
Plumas County that are in this
Why?
room? Okay, so there's, okay.
Majority by far.
Wait, that wasn't everybody.
Oh, I know.
There was a good handful.
No, but it was
That
the
doesn't
majority.
matter. But that doesn't matter, you're
We
right.
got a whole bunch out here too, by the way.
Okay.
They're out here.
But the advertising is through Facebook and through email lists and all that. And not everyone is on that
I was in the
avenue.
newspapers, I was on radio, I don't know.
Yeah, on your website, your agenda, is agenda.
Mr. Kennedy, I think you made a lot of really good notes probably, and honestly, truly, I would really implore you to call us and please ask us questions if you have things like that. And I know the one thing I think that's important, and I want to thank you guys, because I know that no matter what you do, you can't please everybody. All right? And so, and that's the truth. But really and truly, when we elect you for you to help us, help you, help all of us. And right now, California does not work. You know that. Every discussion you have is going to be about where's the money. You all have the fire tax. You all know that that's not going one iota to take care of fires. So with all these different issues, please, ladies and gentlemen, please give us a call. If you have any questions about anything, we can answer that, because I agree with you, sir. You need to be educated. And the people really who maybe are adamantly against it, it's because they don't have the education on what it is.
And I have actually seen this presentation a few times. And my questions, representation, I don't think anyone disagrees with that. But my questions are on the finances, and I have questions regarding the coincidence that all of the federal funding will be automatically replaced by per dollar exact with federal income. So I would have questions with whoever puts together the money part, because I think there's huge flaws in that. And I would like to talk, and I could be wrong, but I don't think I am in some of the things that I'm looking at. But the money is the issue. I mean, just because you change another state, it doesn't change the weather, it doesn't change the ability to create a business here, it doesn't change any of that. So, but we're getting into a point where now we'll have to discuss it. And I love your presentation. Every time I've heard your presentation, it's actually too bad more people that are out talking about this don't have your ability to present it.
If you, and another thing is, if you want us to come, I'll come back here 100 times if that's what it takes. Sure.
Well, for me personally, it's just the money.
Yeah, okay.
Representation, I think everyone agrees, it's the finances.
Mr. Kennedy, just one quick thing on the money. Just so you know, if California had the money, in my discussion with Jim Nielsen, California doesn't have the money. See, we keep talking about having the money. If they had the money, we wouldn't have the fire tax. If we had the money, we wouldn't have to pay a per mile tax.
Actually,
If
we get a lot of money from California to help with our sheriff's department, with.
Not very good.
Well,
No.
not as much as you need, the sheriff's a friend of mine too. And the whole thing, but the
Are
whole,
you on the budget?
well, no, the budget is something that you have that starts at one end and ends at the other, and you really don't know if you're gonna get everything. Like Shasta County didn't get their $3 million for mental health. They just didn't get it, because the government didn't give it to them. And you can check with David Keough. I mean, what I'm saying is the money's not there, sir. That's why they're trying to raise more.
Again, it's the money part of that.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Fair enough. Okay,
Thank you very much.
that's it, thank you very much.
Be safe out there.